So the general description of a business model applies to any business. So for any business that you want to describe, then with using a business model, then you have to talk about product, customer management, and finance. But there are some specific characteristics of an e-business model or web-based or mobile business model. So for instance, what is the networking space, whether it's business to business, business to consumer, um, person to person, or you're trying to create an ecosystem and so on. So that helps you define of course, the customer component of the business model. The value center basically is the idea of how you're actually using a web-based business or a mobile business or a mobile app to create value. So is it a commerce? Is it based on the content of your app? Is it a communication among the different people, or you're creating a community? And that actually helps you define how you're going to be able to obtain your revenues. So the revenue models are such as advertising, subscription, commission, and so on and so forth. Those have a lot to do with the value that you provide with your e-business. And finally, how are you going to price it? How are you going to price your products and services? So is it fixed pricing? Is it price dynamic? Is it dynamic pricing such as auction, or some kind of customer pricing based on exactly who's buying it, who's paying for it, and so on. So those are very specific to any type of e-business because there are not only a lot of flexibility in terms of the operation, in terms of the business strategy, but also because of the very nature of direct interaction, the informational content, and so on. So one thing I like to make very, very clear is the definition of customer. This may not be a problem in most of the traditional businesses, but the idea of a customer can be very different from the idea of a user in web-based business, in web or in mobile apps. Of course, there are lots of direct sales. So there are Amazons of the world, there's Salesforce or Microsoft of the world, or there Wall Street Journal, Netflix, New York Times of the world. They're actually selling their own product, service, or content. So in those cases, then the people who are using their or buying using their products or service or content are also those people who are actually paying for their business. But in other cases, the user and the customer may not be the same. So some of the e-business or mobile apps are intermediaries, such as they can provide a brokerage service, they can provide an exchange, they provide an aggregator, and in those cases, the users a lot of times are the buyers. So for instance, if you use Wikibuy, which is essentially a price comparison service, then we are the users, but and we actually get rebates. So who's actually paying for the service? We're actually paying Wikibuy to provide a service to us as a user. Those are actually the sellers. So the sellers are actually making the payments or actually sustaining the business financially. So the revenues of those businesses come from the sellers, although the users are the buyers. So now you can see that the misalignment between the users and customers. But if you go to the network type of e-business, such as social networks and some of the content providers, and so on, then the users are the members of the users of the network. A lot of us use Facebook, a lot of you use Instagram, a lot of us use other Twitter, and we're not paying for that. So who's paying Facebook, who's paying Twitter, who's paying Instagram to provide a service to us, the users? Those are the third parties, those are the advertisers, those are the sponsors. So the advertisers and sponsors, they are not the users of this particular product or service, but they are the customers of the network. So of this network product. So the network product has to make sure that the users are happy so that they get a lot of users, but but probably even more important, they have to make sure that the advertisers and the sponsors are happy because those are their paying customers. Another thing that's interesting about e-business is the revenue models. So in order to sustain the business financially, then and also because of the misalignment between the users and customers who are paying for the products or services ultimately, then there are all kinds of different revenue models are created, such as so it's not necessarily just the sales, but we come up with models such as subscription, transaction fees, affiliation, and advertising is a big one because a lot of the content sites, the networking sites, they're all based on advertising. So those are just some of the revenue models listed in the textbook. You can probably identify a few others that are not discussed here, such as a freemium service. So you start out offering free, and then you charge if the customer or the users want the premium services. Or another revenue model is a so-called in-app purchases. So you let the users to start using the apps, but if you want, for instance, if you want to supercharge your characters in a game, or if you want to dress up your character in a game, then you have to pay. So that's the in-app purchases. So in a way, there are lots of users. Only some of the users are paying customers, but a lot of the users are just free users. So the paying customers are actually sustaining all of the usage because the network is really what creates the value for everyone, including the users and the paying customers. So the textbook lists a lot of the different e-business models in details, and I'm not going through all of them, and you can read about them, and you should read every single one of them very carefully because they are actually very well discussed, very extensively discussed. When you read about those e-business models, just think not only in terms of the models themselves, but also in terms of those four components. Again, product, customer, management, and finance. And then think about if you want to create your own business model, how would you be able to describe your business model, your e-business model in those four terms? When you want to get financing, when you want to complete the offering of your business, then you have to create a business plan, right? So that's one of the requirements for a startup in order to get financing, in order to get investments. Once you have a good business model, then creating a business plan is no problem. We're not going to go into details of writing a business plan, although there's lots of references, and I provided some in the in this module page. So you can read about that, and it's really not that difficult to create a business plan once you have a solid business model. You just have to know what the format is, what the requirements are, what needs to be in there. So I listed here as a generic set of components in the business plan. So for instance, of course, you have to have an executive summary. You want to talk about the company itself. So that's sort of a little different idea from a business model is a strategic level description, but a brief account of how the company began and its strengths and so on. So that's sort of an emotional hook into the attachment to a company for the readers. So if you want the potential investors to really feel connected to your business, you sort of have to want to give your business a human side of it to make other people understand that this is not just the random creation of a business, but it actually has a lot to do with the founders themselves, and there's lots of emotions and a lot of connection to real life and so on. And then you want to turn your business model into some solid writing into a business plan. So you want to talk about the customer side of it, your company's target and potential, the market size and so on. Then you want to describe the service and product and why it's good, why it's better than others. And then you want to describe the market potential. So everything. So the product and the customer components of your business model will culminate will combine to create this section, which is probably the most important section of your business model, of your business plan, which is the marketing and sales strategy. And then you want to talk about the management team and a little bit about the operation, and finally you want to talk about the financial projections and how the investors will make money. So you can see that those separate four components of a business model can easily mapped onto a business plan. And of course, there's a lot more writing that you have to do. There's you have to add the details to the high level strategic descriptions of a business model, so that other people can really understand how the business can be operated, how the business can be sustained above and beyond the general strategy. But once you have a good business model, a business plan is not hard to create.